Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Strong and Bold. My name is Fortina and today I'm going to talk about understanding. So, what is the meaning of understanding? How do we understand things? How do we understand people? How do we perceive that we have understood things or others? So, today I'm going to read from the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 3 chapter 5 to 6, and it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not rely on your own insight. Let his presence pervade all your ways, and he will make your paths smooth. What does this mean? I think for me it says that as much as we would like to conclude or understand things in our own way on how we see things, it's not always the same way. So we should try to find an insight or seek God's guidance for him to guide our own understanding. So for instance, if you have a spouse and you're like, man, I cannot understand this man how he thinks. I cannot understand this woman how he thinks. I'll say sometimes because I especially, or us as people, we jump into conclusions. We do not get the whole picture, right? So let's say, for example, my spouse might do something and I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, you know better. You can do better. But the thing is, like, in that instance, I'm not only judging him, but I'm also not seeing his point of view. So when we lean in God's understanding, we can even pray about it and like, God, I do not understand why this person keeps on doing this. It could be a silly mistake, it could be a big thing, but we're like, I cannot understand why he keeps on doing A, B, C, D. So then that is when it comes to like leaning in God's understanding and ask God, I do not understand why this person is doing this, or why this person is treating me like this, or why this is happening. So sometimes God will show you the bigger picture, or sometimes it's like learning the process of submission and obedience and letting God guide you in his own way until to the finishing line. So sometimes we see something and we want to know, like, what's the outcome, how is this going to end. This is just the beginning, or you just encountered someone, right? You're like, am I supposed to date this person? Am I supposed to get married to this person? What's actually going on? So then sometimes it's like it's a matter of trusting in the process and just going with the flow. I understand it's really, really hard to go with the flow, especially when you have been like bitten so many times. But sometimes it's like you wouldn't know because not the time for that thing to be revealed to you. But when something has been revealed to you, then you get to know the time and you get to know God's revelation. So in other words, like sometimes we might never understand why people do this or that, but it's always advisable to seek God's understanding. Like ask God, like, why am I going through this? What am I supposed to learn from this? Or I do not understand this season. What is this season? What am I supposed to learn from this season? Especially the season of waiting. Man, if you're waiting on something or on somebody, or God told you about something and you have to sit and wait for it, that is one of the hardest seasons for any single person to experience, because it's like, you know, you're not meant to be there. You're waiting on to the next, but then the next is not there yet, so you are in the presence. So it's like sometimes you can feel like you are stagnant, because you're like, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but then also the path that God has for me is not opened yet. So you're like, what do I do? Why am I experiencing this? So then understanding God's purpose for that season that you are in, the waiting season, I'll say it's like learn more on what God wants you to do, or learn more on what's next for you. So sometimes it's about preparation. So yes, understanding goes well with preparation. So for example, if I'll talk about myself, I'm short-tempered. When God was making me, he gave me 3 drops of patience. But in this season, especially this year from last year, I have been learning about being patient. Like, there's so many things we can control as human beings, and there's so many things we can choose to do as human beings, but sometimes that is not the right thing or the right path for you. So being patient by understanding what that season means for you, it's a key. It is a very big factor, contributing factor for either your success or your failure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes some things might look good on paper, but it's not for you. It could be a career, it could be a contract, it could be the next move, it could be you moving to a different state, a different country, but it might not be the right move for you. So when you learn more what God is requiring of you in that moment, in that season, I'll say that you will know. You will understand more from his point of view. We can never know fully, but he will give you messages and you will understand in that concept. So the other thing is that patience is hard, but then patience and understanding always go hand in hand. So you cannot be understanding if you're not patient or even caring. So it takes time for us to, if you have children, it takes time for you to understand them, how they think, how they see things, how they process their emotions, so you understand them better. Same as your spouse, it takes time, patience, consistency to understand them too. And that's why I say understanding is not just a word by itself. It is like layers under layers for you to understand. So you need to maybe get to understand point A, then you go to point B. You need to understand point B to go to point C. The same all the way to Z. Or even like sometimes you need to understand that space. Or even sometimes you need to know, like, you will never see fully or trust you will never see fully or trust your spouse fully to understand what they do and how they do these things that they do sometimes, So it's that what God says, lean on your own understanding, especially when you're both like matured and God speaks to each and every one of us separately and differently. So even if you're married to someone, how God speaks to them, it could be different. So God might tell you to do A, B, C, D, but God can never tell you to harm someone. So if you feel like God has told you to do A, B, C, D, and it's like harming someone in a way, I say, like, reflect on it and actually sit with it. Try to understand that message. So the way I may understand God is not the same way like maybe my spouse might understand God, and then that sometimes can bring conflict or friction at home. So sometimes it's good to like lean in God's understanding. Like, I do not understand why they have made this decision. Walk me through it. Walk through the process. But then sometimes people want to walk with you in that process. It's not because they want to understand you better. It's just like maybe they want to prove a point or prove that you are wrong. So sometimes we can never know fully why we do what we do and when we do it, but all I can say is we can try to understand ourselves. So let's say we can have like some habits, we can have some ideologies. So even if for ourselves to understand ourselves, we need to sit with those thoughts. We need to sit with that process that we make decision in with, and then we will learn more and understand ourselves. So the more I understand about who I am, how I come to be, how I became who I am, I'm going to understand more other people. But if I do not put myself in that position to understand me better, then there's a high chance I will never understand everybody around me. So I will never put myself in their shoes to understand them, or to understand how they perceive me, or how they see me, or how they interpret some of the things I do or even say. So that's why it's really, really important for us to get to know each other, but also to understand beyond, I'll say beyond the reason, beyond what we can comprehend, beyond what we see. So always seek God's way of understanding someone, or even understanding yourself, understanding a season, or even a phase of yourself. Like understanding why this is not the job for me, understanding why this is not the person for me, why, where do you need me to be, what do you want, what is it required of me in this season, to understand this season better and to move forward in the things or the place or with the person that you have chosen for me. So my brothers and sisters, I'm going to leave you here with this. I'll just say, the more you understand God, the more you will know yourself better. And the more you get to know yourself better, the more you will understand the things that God has for you. And the more you will understand people around you. So take heart, don't be too hard on yourself, but be kind, gentle, and patient with who you are, with the process. It's a process. Look, they usually say Rome wasn't built in a year, but also St. Paul, some of you know him. He wrote all the letters somewhere in the Bible. Yeah. From the time he was Saul to the time he was Paul, it took him maybe 3 years. So from him being blind, it took him 3 days to see. But also from the time he started seeing, it took him 3 years before he became the Apostle Paul that majority of us know of. So sometimes when you are learning to walk with God, or to walk in God's way and path, it's not going to be a clear, concise step. It's going to require time, lots of wisdom, lots of patience, and lots of understanding for the call that God has for you in your life, and also where God is needing you to go to next. So have a wonderful day, have a wonderful evening, until we see each other in the next episode of Strong and Bold. Stay blessed. Bye.